Listen, kids, there's two types of gamers out there, alright? There's wide gamers and there's deep gamers. Deep gamers are the kinds of people who take one game, get really good at that one game. Like they take CSGO or Dota 2 or Fall Guys or something, and they just put an ungodly amount of hours into it. And don't get me wrong, deep gamers are really good at those like 1 or 2 games that they play, but their entire gaming experience is really just being good at those 1 or 2 games. Then you have wide gamers. And wide gamers are like take all that time you put into Rainbow Six Siege and spread it out wide to like a few hundred different games. That's your wide gamer. I used to be a deep gamer. I put an ungodly amount of time into Overwatch and gotten to the bare fringes of Diamond, and then Jeff nerfed Roadhog and now I can't hook people through walls, so I have nothing to show for myself. But you know what? That's fine, because I can just become a wide gamer and use my jack of all trades video game edition lifestyle to excuse me for being bad at video games. And so, here are some games that I played after becoming a wide gamer. Yes, starting with Bastion. Oh wait, I can't go back to Over. Okay, we're gonna have to start with the second best Bastion, the Supergiant one. Bastion is the first game Supergiant Games made, and one of the OG indie games before indie games were cool. And it has aged. Not too terribly, but it has aged. I mean, the idea of walking around and having floating islands come into place around you and just having that be the whole game is pretty cool. The combat is pretty alright, but I was mostly here for the setting and story, and I think it's good. I like the ending sequence a lot. I feel like there's a lot of people who will say this game is a masterpiece, and maybe rightly so for them. I didn't come away with the same feelings, but I like the art, story, setting, narration, music, and the ending too. If you like good games and want to try some classic indies to see how far we've come, Bastion is definitely cool. Next on the list is the third best Bastion, Transistor, which is actually not a sequel, but was Supergiant Games' sophomore project. And you know what? It's aged, it's fine. I like stories, I like settings, and I like characters, and Transistor has those. I mean, it also has gameplay, and this differs quite a bit from Bastion due to the fact that this game has you freeze time and pick a bunch of moves you want to use and then run away like a little chump until your energy meter goes back up. And I'm sure it's pretty dense combat, but I just wouldn't know too much about it because it wasn't engaging enough for me, and I just wanted a decent story. And I got that, so I recommend it, yeah. Alright boys, it's time to go down to Weeb Town. A friend of mine was kind enough to let me borrow a copy of The World Ends With You, a cult classic amongst select Nintendo DS owners. This game is more or less about the main character dying and then needing to learn how to get along with others so that he can come back to life. And the gameplay really reflects that. You gotta fight with the main character on the bottom screen and while also doing button prompts on the top screen with another character. The multitasking ability necessary in order to master this game is through the roof. It's also probably best played on the DS. I mean, the game really relies on having 2 screens. You could probably pick this up on the Switch for a prettier version of the game, but if you're a true weeb, you gotta go with the DS version. I'll be honest though, I thought about giving up on this game multiple times because of how bad I was at the combat. I guess the story, setting, and music kept me going. Are you recognizing a pattern yet? I did end up finishing the game and I liked it. I have been sleeping on Ori for so long, and I just have to say this game is like playing a Metroidvania developed by Pixar. Everything about this game is great, the movement feels wonderful, the little details in the environment are incredible. This world just feels so alive, and Ori feels just as alive to control and move around. Most Metroidvanias are a lot about combats and like being able to like master the fights and stuff, but this game is more about positioning. And I kinda like that. You can just focus on where you are and let this little orb thing do all the pew-pewing for you. I assume most of you have already played this game, but if you haven't, there's still hope for you. Please give it a go. Journey is like an OG art game, where you are a guy who goes on a journey. The entire game is like 2 hours long, so I can't really say much about it. It's the type of game that's super minimalistic in terms of what you can do, and you just go on a journey. And as you go on this journey, the game gives you feelings, as any good piece of art should do. Also, I won't say how this game deals with multiplayer for minor spoilers' sake, but I really liked how this game handled the multiplayer element to this game. Worth checking out. Alright, listen, I wasn't sure how I'd feel about the whole Pikmin franchise. The only thing I knew from Pikmin was from Smash Bros, and from that angle the game just kinda seemed a little weird to me, but it looked like Nintendo's take on an RTS, and I heard the very vocal minority that is the Pikmin fanbase scream its praises, so I decided to drop the $60 on the game, and you know what? I had a good time. It's really fun to order your Pikmin around, manage which ones should be digging, which ones should be carrying things back to the ship, which ones should be fighting which enemies, all before the sun sets and you have to leave. It's fun to replay the same levels as well and try and get more done with the time limit that you have. I'm not 100% sure that this game is $60 good, but I'd gladly pick up the other Pikmin games, and potentially Pikmin 4 if Nintendo ever decides to let us know it still exists. I would check this one out if it looks interesting to you, for sure. Oh yeah, here's another game I spent my entire life sleeping on. This game is older than I am. After hearing nothing but praise for this game from some people that I look up to a lot, I finally gave in and got the PC edition of Chrono Trigger, which probably isn't the definitive version of the game, but it gets the job done and it's gotten better with time. And yeah, I can definitely see why this game is so loved. It's a well-paced time travel game where a group of heroes from different time periods come together and save the world. You got robot from the future, cave woman from dino times, frog with sword, need I say more? I love the cast of characters, I love the story, I love traveling from different time periods and seeing how changing something in one time period can change something in another time period. I really love the music, I had a good time despite not having the nostalgia glasses. This isn't my favorite game of all time like it is for some people, but that's probably mostly because I didn't grow up with it like a lot of people did. Give the game a go, you definitely won't regret it. Man, I only made an entire video on this game last year because of how much I loved it. Blasphemous is a Metroidvania set in a deeply religious world of Custodia. This game is brutal, gory, and stuffed full of great lore for you to dive into. I love how this game uses ancient Spanish Christian iconography to create an oppressive atmosphere. I love how brutal it is. I love how well done the animation is. The boss fights were pretty dang great as well, not just to fight, but also to look at. And it's also worth mentioning that the devs have added some substantial DLC for free since I made that last video, and they have been pretty meaty updates that include more bosses, better prayers, you can pet a dog now? Come on. I know this might be a bit of a stretch, but I think this game is up there with Hollow Knight and Ori, for me at least. It's up there. I think it's up there. Alright, imagine that there's an abandoned city, and the city is crawling with genetically altered zombie-like people, and it's 1960, and the entire city is in the middle of the ocean. Bioshock is one of the best games that I've gotten to play in a long time. It's one of the best examples of how the environment itself can be a character in a game. Rapture is so much fun to explore. The details everywhere are insane. The first Bioshock also has what is probably the best plot twist in any video game, possibly any story ever, at least from what I've experienced thus far. Now, what you gotta understand is there isn't just one Bioshock, there's actually 3 of them, and I wanted to play them all, so I got Bioshock Infinite on Steam, then Bioshock 2 on my Switch, because apparently the PC port of Bioshock 2 is hot garbage, which unfortunately meant that I had to play this here first-person game with a controller, which, if you don't know, is something that I hate with a passion. But you know what? I thought Bioshock 2 was also a good game. I know it gets garbage sometimes from the community, but I liked it. And I recommend it too. And then there's Bioshock Infinite, which was like, yeah, let's take this same idea but put it in the sky instead. I really love this game so much. It's very different from the first 2 Bioshocks, and there's a couple of videos that critique the crap out of this game's story and setting, and listen, they're all 100% right, by the way. I think every point they bring up in these videos are valid, but I don't care. I still love this game so much. Inmost is an art game, I guess. It's another short game that has you swap between 3 characters, a man, a knight, and a young girl. The story unfolds through these 3 separate journeys and ends in a rather emotional finale. This game is very atmospheric, the pixel art is super amazing, but what really shines above all here is the sound design. Seriously, if you play this game, make sure that you're using headphones because the sound design puts AAA games to shame. No exaggeration. No indie game has any business having sound design this good. Anyway, I recommend this game if you like art games, because this is another example of a game where the gameplay takes a bit of a backseat, but it's still worth it to me. You know, after Bastion and Transistor, I kind of felt like maybe Supergiant games just weren't for me, you know? I don't know. I mean, I tried Bastion and I liked it, and I liked Transistor too, but the gameplay just wasn't for me. And yet, I still had 2 friends nagging at me to play one more Supergiant game, Hades. Supergiant Games' most recent project that had just come out of early access, and I ended up putting a good many hours into this game. You play as Zagreus, who is the son of Hades, and you try to escape hell, but it turns out that's really hard, so you have to die a lot. But it turns out you're immortal and you keep coming back to your home, so you try to run away again and again, but as you keep playing, you gain new abilities and passives that make it slightly easier for you. The gameplay is spot on, and the progression loop is stellar, but where this game really shines for me is that Supergiant Games has managed to make a game with a continuous story out of a roguelike, which actually makes sense. Which shouldn't be possible, but I guess it is. Every time you die, the characters have something new to say to you, and they still haven't run out of things to say, even after like 100 escape attempts after me. Even if you don't like roguelites, play this game. You'll probably change your mind. Being a Paper Mario fan is rough. Like, Nintendo put out 2 good games and then, like, the rest never met our expectations. And you know what? If Nintendo isn't gonna do Paper Mario right, then indie devs are just gonna have to do Paper Mario right. Bug Fables, everybody. Listen, you can judge this game as a Paper Mario game, or you can judge it on its own, as its own game. And either way you spin it, this game is fantastic. The gameplay in particular is nailed down pretty well. The same 3 characters are always used throughout the game, but there's enough depth between these 3 that keep the game going for a while. The lore is pretty in-depth too. There's like 40 hours of content here, and a decent overall story with a cool cast of characters and a great setting. This might actually be the best Paper Mario game, but it's also worth being judged as its own game. If you're looking for a non-weeb RPG, please play this game. It's very good. I did not end up playing Animal Crossing last year. It just didn't seem like my type of game. I'm glad for all of you that had fun with it, but for my Animal Crossing type fix, I got it from Spiritfarer. In this game, you play as Charon from Hades, except Charon is fat and he dies right at the beginning of the game, and you have to take his place. Basically, you play as Stella, actually, not Charon. And you own a ship that takes spirits to the afterlife, and it's your job to keep these spirits happy, fulfill their last wishes, hug them, and get to know them before sending them off to the afterlife and crying. Rinse and repeat. This game is beautiful, relaxing, emotional, with great animation and some Metroidvania elements, a co-op mode, which I never got to try, a beautiful soundtrack, and a great cast of characters that you will get to know as they pour their heart out to you before going on to the afterlife. And the devs will be adding more characters throughout this year with some more patches. I will probably be playing this game again when those patches come through, and I am honestly looking forward to it. Alright, no idea if this is going to be like a regular thing or not for these videos, but the last 3 games that I have on here are like some of the best games of all time for me personally, so do with that information what you will. I first briefly heard of NieR Automata while going through random YouTube videos, and I heard the game was good, so I looked up a review of the game to see what other people thought of the game, and came across this video by Skill Up titled "The Masterpiece You Probably Won't Play." I watched the first few minutes of it until he said this.
But the reason I'm making this video is because NieR is so unbelievably worth playing that if I can convince a single person to play this game after this review, it will have been 7 days well spent.
And when I heard that, I thought to myself, wow, turned the video off and bought the game to make sure I could go into it knowing as little as possible. That was a very good decision. NieR Automata is the first game I decided to play after getting a new PC built, and I'm very glad I did. The number of reasons I love this game are too many to go through in this video, but it's worth mentioning that this game is particularly drenched in philosophy, from Pascal to Nietzsche to Marx to Kierkegaard. The philosophy references are everywhere, and the existential nihilism that challenges all those philosophies is dense. The soundtrack on this game is potentially the best soundtrack of all time. The world is amazing to explore, the combat is satisfying and has a ridiculous amount of depth to it, and the atmosphere is oppressive and amazing. The characters are amazing, the voice acting is amazing. I could go on for a while. There's a lot of reasons I love this game that I won't go into because of spoilers and time constraints. It's a very story-rich game, and it actually has 5 endings, and you have to see the end credits at least 3 times in order to see all of them. So yeah, if you end up deciding to pick up this game, when you reach the end credits the first time, you're not done, just so you know. You have to play the game again twice in order to reach the end of the story. Yeah, I don't know guys, I think the weebs did a good job here. This game is an easy 11 out of 10 for me. Welcome to White Space. You've been here as long as you can remember. This game is called Amore. It's kind of a miracle that I found this game as soon as I did, but I was drawn to it primarily because the developers decided to drop this game on Christmas Day last year, which I thought was pretty ballsy of them. Anyway, this game has been in the works for like 6 to 7 years now, and it's finally here. And it's a masterpiece. There's only so much about this game that I'm willing to say because of spoilers, but this is one of the most wonderfully crafted stories in an Earthbound inspired RPG I've ever witnessed. It does contain a lot of sensitive material like depression and suicide, so if you are sensitive to those kinds of things, I would stay away from this game. But to everyone else, I implore you to give this game a go. It's not just a wonderfully crafted story, but a full-fledged RPG with great mechanics, settings, and music. Oh, and also it's a psychological horror game. I probably should have mentioned that. Yeah, this game has a habit of getting you super comfortable in a happy dreamland only to remind you that, yeah, it's still a horror game. That's all I'm going to say about this game though. Please play it and try to get the good ending. You will more than likely shed tears along the way, but you'll thank me for going through with it. This is the type of game that I wish I could forget so that I could experience it again. This game is an easy 11 out of 10. Alright, now, if you've known me for the past year or so, you've probably heard me gush about this game a decent bit already, but you know what? Here we go again. Atlus must hate money, right? Because they refused to port Persona 5 to PC, but in the meantime, they did decide to port Persona 4 to PC, so I decided to settle for that. And I'm very happy I did. This game good. It's very hard to describe exactly why a Persona game is good because it doesn't sound fun saying it out loud, but basically you are a high school student. By day, that's all you are, a mundane high school student who goes to school, hang out with friends, get a part-time job, maybe play a sport or join a club or something, and then by night, you go into an alternate dimension and fight shadows with personas, crawling your way through dungeons created by human psyches going haywire on acid, trying to get a victim who's been kidnapped before their own shadow kills them and spits them out into the real world in an ongoing murder mystery case. It's kind of like Japanese Scooby-Doo with Jungian psychology drenched all over it, except you also have to do your homework or your uncle will get mad at you. Sounds like an interesting idea for a game. I mean, I could see myself putting some time to this. What the frick? If that doesn't sound like an addictive cycle to you, then you have to try it to understand. It's a really interesting idea where you have to hang out with your friends in the real world, and by hanging out with your friends in the real world, you power up your personas in the Carl Jung world. The story and characters were very engaging to me. The Jungian psychology is handled pretty well. I love the characters, especially Kanji, and I didn't want the game to end, to be honest with you, so I 100%ed the game, which should tell you something, by the way, because I've only 100%ed like 4 games in my life, and Blasphemous doesn't count because they updated the game, so there's not much more that can be said here. Almost everything about this game I love. The story, the characters, the gameplay loop, Rise Best Girl, Kanji Forever, and it's only $20. Play the freaking game! Alright, that's it for today's episode of games in my backlog that I wanted to gush about. All these games are good. I personally like some of these more than others, but I'm willing to bet some people will rate some of these games different than me. I hope maybe you found some games that you'd like to try for yourself. I'll see you next time I get through more of my ever-growing backlog. Thanks for watching to the end. Remember to brush your teeth. Goodbye.